Good evening, my name is Blake and I am going to bring you a video today about my personal cons of the People's Republic of China, and I will give it to you today. Things I don't like about China, negative things about China in my personal opinion. Here we go. The first con about China is that very often people smoke in the bathrooms and in restaurants. I said it. They smoke in the bathrooms and in restaurants. My wife has a theory that people smoke in the bathrooms because it helps them poop. It might help their poop go through their you-know-what in a more efficient, faster way. Whether that's true or not, I just think it's very impolite to smoke in the bathroom. The bathroom is a place where we do our business. And it's very common. You go to the mall, you go anywhere, a train station, and the bathroom is flooded with smoke. I can't speak for the ladies group, but in the men's bathroom, smoking is very common. Not all the time, but very often. People are either smoking or you get a whiff of the smell of smoke. Just trying to imagine it right now on the toilet, smoking. It's also very common in restaurants. In my experience, if you go to KFC or Burger King or any non-Chinese establishment, I don't see as much smoking. But if you go to a Chinese restaurant, people smoke, especially the owners and the managers. Now, I'm having a son in a few months, so I don't like the idea of taking my kid to eat out and people are smoking. Unfortunately, in China, there is no non-smoking section in restaurants like in my country and other countries. People smoke in restaurants. My last video, someone said that people smoke in bathrooms and in restaurants because of cultural influence from the United States. I'm open-minded. I'd like to learn more things. If you have the same opinion, or if you know of other reasons as to why the Chinese like to smoke in the bathroom and in restaurants, please drop a comment below. Speaking of restaurants, another con of China is Chinese food very often gives me the runs. I get a lot of diarrhea. Chinese food is very delicious and very healthy. However, for some reason, very often whenever I eat Chinese food, I always get diarrhea. I think it might be because they put so much grease in the food. There's a lot of grease in the plate. My wife has no issues, and perhaps you don't. Maybe you have frequent diarrhea whenever you eat Chinese food. Maybe you don't. Drop a comment below. Perhaps it is my problem only, but that's another con. When I was in Korea, I very often craved Korean food. Korean food is very delicious. I can make a separate video on Korean food, but I'm sure many of you, if you've lived in Korea or have traveled there, the food is so good. Cheese tteokbokki, samgyeopsal, dak-galbi, kamjatang, bibimbap, jokbal. Everything is very good and delicious, but in China, for some reason, I don't really crave Chinese food. It's healthy, but my wife and I, for whatever reason, we don't really crave it. Interesting, right? In my time in South Korea, I noticed a lot of Westerners really didn't want to eat Korean food. And where I live, it's not a lot of foreigners. But I'm assuming it's the same, that people coming from Western countries, a lot of them have a hard time wanting to eat Chinese food. So if you are against Chinese food, you'll have to go to the big city. Don't live in the countryside or in a small town like I do, because the only Western food available is KFC. So if you like to eat foreign food, whether it's American food, Mexican food, Russian food, whatever kind of food you want, you'll have to go to a big city like Shanghai or Hangzhou or any big city. Where I live, it's mostly just Chinese food. So my wife and I eat at home a lot. We just buy our groceries and eat at home. We don't really crave Chinese food very often. We do eat it sometimes, but it's not the kind of food that I crave. So it is what it is. But I did crave Chinese buffets back home in the United States before I came here, so kind of ironic. I spoke about the bathroom earlier. We all go to the bathroom. Well, another con of China is that if you are not in a mall or a train station, it is very difficult to find a bathroom. We very often get the sudden urge to go number 2 or number 1, but especially if you have the urge to go number 2, if you're not in a mall or in a train station, it's very difficult to find a bathroom. very difficult. I'm pretty sure if you're in Shanghai or any big city, many restaurants have bathrooms, but in my experience, many Chinese restaurants don't have bathrooms, and if they do, the bathrooms are kind of very gross. And you got a lot of cigarettes throughout on the floors and in the toilet bowl. So that's something that is a thing in China. If you do find a bathroom, very often, in most cases, there is no toilet paper provided. If you're in a mall or in a train station, there is toilet paper, but any other public bathroom that you find, very often there's no toilet paper. Always make sure you have toilet paper on you. You can very easily find them at convenience stores, but make sure you have it, because if you need to go to the bathroom, whether you're doing a number 1 or a number 2, toilet paper will not be provided. And who wants a smelly you know what? It's so hot right now. I mean, it's summer, it rained earlier, it's humid. Well, I got some bad news for you. Very often, China does not provide AC in restaurants or many public places. There seems to be some kind of cultural belief that if there's AC, the Chinese will get sick. That's just from what I've heard. So maybe that's right, maybe that's wrong. Drop a comment below if I'm right or if I'm wrong. But very often in a restaurant, there is no AC, so prepare to sweat. If you choose to live in a foreign country, it is your responsibility to know how to communicate in the local language and how to read the local alphabet of the language you should be learning. So this is not a knock on China, but it's just a reality. If you don't know how to read the Chinese alphabet, and if you don't know how to speak Chinese, you will have to constantly screenshot and translate in your Google Translate or whatever translating app you use into English or into whatever language you like to speak. Also, postal workers and delivery people, most of the time, 9.9 times out of 10 in my experience, don't speak English. So if they decide to call you, and if you don't know what they're saying, chances are they won't know how to communicate in English or whatever language you know how to speak. So keep that in mind. I've been here for 3 months. I should probably amp up the pace on learning Chinese. Xie. I should add, however, that Alipay, luckily, does translate into English. So outside of Alipay, you don't have much luck with translation. You'll have to screenshot and translate in your own app. Another con in China, I've talked about it in my previous video. Sometimes you'll see people peeing in public. I'm not talking about peeing in a public bathroom. Literally, people pee in public. I see it at least once or twice a month. Some kid will be peeing on the street and their parents will help them with taking you know what off and helping them pee and helping them getting themselves back together. It is a thing here. I've heard that sometimes adults do it too. I've never seen it. I hope to never see it, but it is a thing in China. People do pee in the streets, mostly children. So if it happens, I'm sure myself and other YouTubers have warned you. As I've said a few times, my wife is pregnant. So about twice a month, my wife and I go to the hospital. And very often the case, people are very rude. They're not trying to be rude, but they just don't have manners. If my wife and I are in the doctor's office, just speaking to the doctor privately, very often people will just open the door. They need something, but they're not willing to wait. So that is a common occurrence in both hospitals I've been to in China. And people tend to cut in line. They can cut you in line. Doesn't happen often, but it can happen. And very often, if someone bumps you in public on accident, they won't tell you sorry. So for some people, this might be offensive, but for me, it's not. But if you get offended by that, you better get used to it. When I was in South Korea, I had an ID called your alien registration card. And this card is your ID. You just keep it in your wallet. You go to immigration, you go to a hotel, you go to a bar, you need your card. It's like a driver's license to show your ID. However, in China, I was surprised to find out that this card does not exist. Your identification in China is in your passport. If you're legally working in China, you have a residence permit. You have a work permit, it's a card, but when you go on trains, when you go to hotels, they don't care about your work permit. So your work permit is not really needed. But the point I'm getting to is that you have to take your passport to many places in China. Many people don't like the idea of carrying their passport anywhere outside of the airport because they might lose it. Well, I'm sorry to tell you, in China, get used to taking your passport. If you're going to the hospital, you want to get on a train, you want to go to a hotel and check in, you need your passport. And even if you're not working in China, you need your passport if you're a tourist to do the same thing. So get used to the idea of carrying your passport around. Be responsible, don't lose it, because you will have to carry it. Another con of China is that if you like to use apps like YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, X, or any of these Western apps, they are all blocked in China. All of them. You cannot access these sites. If you type in facebook.com, it'll just say, sorry, this is not supported, or you'll just go to a blank page. If you want to access these apps, you'll need a VPN. I'm not here to tell you which VPN you should use. Do your own research, but you'll need a VPN. And sometimes VPNs don't always work. So you might need at least 2 VPNs just for added comfort to know that everything will be okay. I use Let's VPN and I use Astral. But I'm not here to tell you how I feel about them. But you'll need a VPN in China. So if you don't have a VPN, go get one. And I recommend that you have your VPN before you come to mainland China to make things a little easier for you. I think living in South Korea for a few years, almost over 4 years, really helped me become more open-minded. So I think I was mentally prepared to live in China, but freedom of speech is not allowed in China. You cannot talk about certain topics. I will not speak about them on here, but you probably have an idea of what I'm talking about. You can't criticize anyone in the government. That is just something you have to get used to. There is no right to protest. In South Korea, foreigners and Korean people do protest a lot. With foreigners, it's usually about during Pride Month, from what I know. But Korean people very often protested against the government. And they wouldn't get arrested as long as they weren't being violent. Here in China, even if you're peacefully protesting, it's not allowed here. So if you are all about freedom of speech, if you come from the United States or any Western nation, understand that if you come here, you cannot say what you want to say. So do it privately with your friend, your husband, your wife, anyone in a private space. But you can't say what you want online or in public. Keep that in mind. Freedom of religion is also not allowed. So it doesn't matter what religion you believe in. You cannot freely worship in China. Now, there are churches, but these churches are monitored by the government. If you're a Muslim, if you're a Buddhist, you can worship, but when I say freedom of religion is not allowed, you're not allowed to openly talk about your faith. So, in the West, we're very often told that people in China have no religious freedom. You kind of do. You can go to the church, go to the mosque, go to the temple. You can pray, no problem. But you cannot openly speak about your faith. You cannot go in public, whether it's online or in the public, and talk about your faith. So if you are a religious person, you have to keep it to yourself. If you break any of these rules regarding freedom of speech or freedom of religion, you will probably get deported, but you might go to jail too. So be careful. If you're a bigger size, whether you're fat or whether you're just big, shopping here will be difficult for you. It's the same in South Korea, and I'm sure in other Asian countries too. In China, if you are a bigger size, whether you have big clothes or big shoe size, it is very difficult. Very often in my time in Korea and even here, if I want to shop, I have to have a lot of patience. So if I want to find some shoes, very often, unfortunately, the sizes that are available are maybe like two sizes that I wear, and either take it or leave it. So I'm limited in my options. For t-shirts, if I go to a big city like Hangzhou or Shanghai, I could find clothes, but moral of the story is I have to have a lot of patience. If you are willing to shop for hours and hours finding the outfits that you like, then it's not a problem. But if you are someone who gets very irritated that you can't find those pants or that t-shirt that you want, and you're not willing to keep looking for another hour and a half, then you know what? Shopping will be a miserable experience here. Keep that in mind. This shirt I bought it in Hangzhou. So if you're a bigger size, you can shop here. Just have some patience. The last thing I'd like to talk about in terms of cons is lack of cash. China is not a cashless society, but as I discussed in my previous video, the system is set up in a way to make you not want to use cash. You can easily just pay for things with your WeChat or Alipay scanning a QR code. So if you want to learn more about that, check out my previous video. But if you want to use cash, use cash. But if you want to use it at a small business, like a small bakery or a small coffee shop, they might not have the change. And so I have never been rejected for cash, but sometimes they will tell you we don't have change. Or if they have the change, it will take time to get it to you, and it's an inconvenience on the people working. So understand, if you want to use cash, you can do it, but I recommend use it in big cities like Shanghai, Hangzhou, any big city with lots of tourists. I'm sure cash isn't an issue, but just understand, most people in China don't have cash. They use their QR codes. So keep that in mind. My first month and a half, almost 2 months in China, I used cash very often because it took me almost 2 months to get paid. So I lived on cash, and it wasn't an issue for me, but sometimes there was no change available. Keep that in mind. The video is now over. I want to stress that just because I listed flaws and cons of China does not mean that I think negatively about China. Every country has pros and cons, including my own. So let's be more open-minded, let's respect other cultures, and let's just expand our mind. You don't have to agree with everything, but it's always good to respect a country's way of life and customs. I want to thank you if you have watched the video from beginning to end. It means a lot to me. Please stay tuned for more videos. I look forward to seeing you again next time. Have a great day. Take care of yourself. See you next time.